Alright, so as I said, today's focus is making models. So what is a model? It's a skinny chick who gets paid to walk funny. Look at her. Yeah, that's pretty sexy. Okay, no, really, it's an analysis of a poker situation containing many variables that usually answers an advanced poker question for multiple villain player types. So that's kind of the difference between answering a question and a model, is that a model is going to answer the question for basically any player type that you can think of. It's very important to note about villain player types, solid reg, loose passive, loose aggressive, nit, that those should be defined on your terms, not mine, not anybody else's. You're making the model, you're drawing the conclusions. I've had discussions with players. You could, for the sake of making models, you could probably pigeonhole them into maybe as little as 6 to 10 groups, and that's all you ever have to think about. If you want to get more complex than that, you could get into the 20s and 30s. You could get into the hundreds. And what do I mean by that? The way I view players is they're kind of a mix and match. They're like a Lego set where they have different attributes. You might find a total loose passive player with all the loose passive characteristics, which in heads up is flat calling from the big blind a lot, very low 3-bet, just making calls, giving up a lot. You might find that they have a particularly weird quirk where they have a high level of aggression in a very specific spot. A great example of that is boards like 6-5-5. There is a type of player in heads up that if you c-bet in position a 6-5-5 flop, they're going to check raise you 100% of the time. So players are a mix and match of a finite amount of characteristics, and you have to choose which one of those characteristics means more to you. Which is more important, their 3-bet or how they act in 4-bet triple floated pots. Obviously for most of us it's going to be how often they 3-bet, but those are the big ones. How often they 3-bet, how often they call 3-bets, how often they fold to 3-bets, how often they 4-bet, etc., etc. So those create different player types. So define them on your own terms. Tools of the trade. We're going to be using PokerStove. In the next video, I'm going to be using CardRunners EV. It certainly could shorten some things in your analysis for this video. The great thing about CardRunners EV, just one of the most simple basic features, is it keeps track of your range from street to street. So if you enter a range in preflop, it's going to assume that that is the pool of hands. I mean, that's how it's supposed to happen, right? For the rest of the hand. So your river, the set of hands that your villain can have on the river must be a subset of the set of hands you gave him preflop. That it keeps that very ordered for you, because trust me, I did this model by hand that we're about to get into, and it's tough with just PokerStove to keep that in mind. It's a great tool. I know it's CardRunners. You guys probably think, oh, he's just trying to sell it. I don't get any commission or anything. I do think it's a wonderful tool. I don't think it's anything that you couldn't do without PokerStove or Excel, but that said, time is money. It will save you tons of time, give you better results too. So we need PokerStove, CardRunners, EV, Excel, or we don't need CardRunners EV, I'll say, but Excel is good. Most of you probably have that in some form. There's OpenOffice, which is free if you don't have a spreadsheet program, and you can make nice spreadsheets there. And Hold'em Manager PT3, we're not going to be using that today, but it's just obviously so that you can review the spots, so that you can make the models. So, pretty simple. So the components of a model, let's look at her here. We have value range, we have objective info, subjective info. This chick's, her elbows are way too pointy. She should not be in modeling. And then we have past hands, we have bluff range, we have so many things. I could have filled that screen. So the components of models will all come down to a few. We want to identify the weakest part of the model. What is most subject to variation or being wrong? What's most critical to the model? And we always want to keep those clear in our mind. Then when we come to some conclusions from the model, we'll find that, hey, I can make this hero call given this set of circumstances. We want to know how that answer changes. What has to be true for it not to be good to make that call? So there's generally a few areas. For when you're talking about hero calls, there's obviously not making the hero call, making the hero call, and possibly finding out that it's neutral EV. Those are pretty much the results. So there's 3 tiers to that model. So what has to be true for the hero call to be good? And actually that's going to be related to the model that we're going to get to today.